We went to war based on false information. In February of 2003, former Secretary of State Powell stood before the United Nations and made the case for war with Iraq. Secretary Powell described intelligence claiming that Iraq had provided, quote, chemical or biological weapons training for al-Qaeda. The claim was an ominous one. Where did it come from? The statements were based on what turned out to be the false claims of a detainee named Ibn al-Sheikh al-Libi. And it has since been reliably reported that al-Libi made his claims only after he was subjected to the harshest interrogation techniques. And what made it even worse, by the way, is that at the same time that this was happening, administration officials were trumpeting, same time they were trumpeting al-Libi's claims to the world, our own Defense Intelligence Agency believed that he was lying. Not only does harsh or abusive treatment decrease the reliability of the information obtained, it actually can increase the resistance to cooperation. When I visited Afghanistan last year, a senior intelligence officer told me that treating detainees harshly is actually a roadblock to getting intelligence from detainees. Here's why. Al-Qaeda, he said, and Taliban terrorists are taught to expect Americans to abuse them. They're recruited based on false propaganda that says that the United States is out to destroy Islam. Treating detainees harshly only reinforces their distorted view and increases their resistance to cooperation. President Obama has taken important steps to reverse the previous administration's ill-advised policies. He ordered an end to abusive interrogations. He's closed the CIA's secret prisons, and he is committed to shutting down Guantanamo prison. Now, Mr. Cheney claimed last week that President Obama's decisions have made us less secure and that abusive interrogation techniques worked. Mr. Cheney has said that the use of abusive techniques, quote, prevented the violent death of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of innocent lives, close quote. Mr. Cheney's claims are directly contrary to the judgment of our FBI director, Robert Mueller, that no attacks on America were disrupted due to intelligence obtained through the use of those techniques. Mr. Cheney has also claimed that the release of classified documents would prove his view that the techniques worked. But those classified documents say nothing about numbers of lives saved, nor do the documents connect acquisition of valuable intelligence to the use of abusive techniques. I hope that the documents are declassified so that people can judge for themselves what is fact and what is fiction. Now, Mr. Cheney has made other false statements. For instance, his claim that the techniques used on detainees were, quote, the same exact procedures, close quote, used on our own people in the SERE training regime. That could not be further from the truth. A report by the CIA Inspector General said that the CIA's Office of Medical Services judged that the SERE waterboard experience is totally different from the CIA's usage. And the reason is absolutely clear. SERE training is administered to our own people in highly controlled settings. It can be terminated at any time by the student during the training. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was waterboarded 183 times in 1 month. Waterboarding one of our own personnel, even once, over their objection, would be a felony. It is a colossal misrepresentation for Mr. Cheney to claim that the techniques we use in SERE training are exactly the same, his words, as those used against detainees. The abuse of detainees in our custody has alienated our allies, it has fueled al-Qaeda's propaganda, and it has served as a recruitment tool for terrorists. At a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing last year, former Navy General Counsel Alberto Mora testified that, quote, there are serving U.S. flag rank officers who maintain that the first and second identifiable causes of U.S. combat deaths in Iraq, as judged by their effectiveness in recruiting insurgent fighters into combat, are respectively the symbols of Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo. The vivid reports of U.S. personnel abusing detainees have also contributed to the decline of America's standing in the world. Since the world embraced us after 9/11, its support for us has been dramatically diminished. And that should set off alarm bells for all of us, because we need the goodwill of people around the world for our own security and to deal with the greatest threats that we face. The bottom line in this debate was articulated by the Director of National Intelligence, Dennis Blair, who said recently that, quote, the damage that coercive techniques have done to our interests far outweigh whatever benefit they gave us. Mr. Cheney's support of abusive techniques dishonors our nation and the men and women who wear our nation's uniform. Listen to what a captain in the 82nd Airborne Division wrote about the abuse of detainees that he had witnessed in Iraq and Afghanistan. In a letter to Senator McCain, he posed what he called, quote, the most important question that this generation will answer. Do we sacrifice our ideals in order to preserve security? And that Army captain said in his extraordinarily eloquent words and in his own way that he would rather die fighting than give up even the smallest part of that idea that is America. Finally, the assertion by Mr. Cheney that the abuse of detainees in U.S. custody at Abu Ghraib were the actions of a, quote, few sadistic prison guards acting on their own is not only false, it is a shameful attempt to avoid accountability for those who are the most responsible, those senior civilian officials who, in the words of our bipartisan Armed Services Committee report, quote, solicited information on how to use aggressive techniques, redefined the law to create the appearance of legality, and authorized their use against detainees. Until now, mainly lower-ranking military personnel have been left to take the rap for the abuses at Abu Ghraib and elsewhere. I believe it is dishonorable and a failure of leadership to lay the sins of Abu Ghraib solely at their doorstep. The buck, to date, has stopped far below where it belongs. Now, the question of whether, and if so, how, to hold senior-level officials accountable for policies utilizing abusive detainees is not for me or Mr. Cheney or even President Obama to answer. It is a legal matter for the Department of Justice to review, away from partisanship and politics. And that's why I have urged our new Attorney General to appoint independent experts, such as a few retired federal judges, to review the mass of material which exists and to make recommendations about whether, and if so, how, officials should be held accountable. This approach would take the question out of politics and help assure a thorough and sober assessment of this chapter in our history. Completing such an assessment is necessary if we are to regain what we have lost. For only then Can we credibly object to the use of abusive tactics on our own troops when they are captured, and to violations of human rights in other countries? Only then can we stem the tide of propaganda that our enemies use to recruit followers to their terrorist cause. Only then can we restore America's image as a country that not only espouses ideals of human rights, but lives by them. That is how we win back hearts and minds and rally the people of the world to the great causes that face mankind. I'm sorry to begin your dinner with this kind of a first course. There's more uplifting subjects to talk about. I felt very keenly that I needed to do this tonight, and I doubly appreciate your hoped for acceptance of my remarks, but also your invitation to make them. Thanks for all you do.